Commander, the human has a Kixin cub inside her combat armor. Zixil's secondary heart stopped. His primary kept beating only through autonomic reflex as he stared at the security monitor, mandibles frozen mid-click. The human, Quinn, the mercenary they'd hired as combat medic, stood in Bay 19, calmly adjusting her shoulder plates. And there, clear as hydrogen plasma, a small, striped head poked out from behind her neck seal, blue-black fur catching the bay lights, tiny crystalline teeth visible as it yawned. "That's impossible," Zixil whispered. "Confirmed impossible, sir," his second-in-command, Glyneth, replied, her voice tight with barely controlled hysteria. "Biometric scanners identify it as a juvenile Quixin, approximately 8 standard weeks old. That's the age when their predatory instincts are most volatile. It should be tearing through her spinal column right now." Instead, the cub was nuzzling the human's ear. The command deck erupted into chaos. "Abort the mission!" someone shouted. "We can't abort. The contracts are already signed. Get a containment team down there." "Containment? For a Kixin cub? We'd need a dozen armed—" "Silence!" Zixil's roar cut through the panic. His claws scraped against the console rim, leaving shallow grooves in the metal. "Someone explained to me how a Kixin juvenile is currently treating a human like a climbing structure instead of a meal." Glyneth pulled up the species database, her movements jerky with stress. Kixin cubs are documented as hyper-aggressive to all non-parental biological signatures. Their bite force at 8 weeks can pierce standard hull plating. Their venom sacs are fully developed. They've killed trained xenobiologists through reinforced containment gloves. She looked up from the screen, her eye membranes flickering rapidly. "Sir, that cub should have killed her the instant it made contact." On the monitor, Quinn reached back absently and scratched behind the cub's ear tufts. It made a sound that Zixil's translator struggled with before spitting out, "Purring?" "Kixin don't purr," Glyneth said flatly. "They don't have the anatomical structures for—" She stopped, watching the screen. "Oh, gods, it's definitely purring." "Mission launch in 8 minutes, the navigation officer reported, sounding like he wanted to be anywhere else in the galaxy. Zixil forced his breathing to steady. The operation had taken 6 months to plan. 3 governments were counting on their success. The payment would fund his station for a year, and it all depended on their combat medic not being a corpse. "Why isn't she reacting?" he demanded. "Why isn't she screaming? Calling for help?" They watched as Quinn finished adjusting her left pauldron, then casually reached back and lifted the cub out from her armor. She held it at arm's length, eye level, studying it with the kind of mild interest one might show a curious insect. "Hey there, little guy," her voice came through the audio. "Pick up." "How'd you get in there? You're gonna mess up my gear calibration." The cub, a creature that could theoretically disembowel a grown Zenthari warrior, dangled from her hands, looking utterly content. Its tail swished lazily. "She's holding it," Glyneth breathed. "Just holding it. Bare hands, no protective equipment. It's not even trying to bite her." Quinn tucked the cub under one arm like a piece of equipment and continued her pre-deployment check with her free hand, completely unconcerned. "Get me a biohazard team," Zixil ordered, his voice hoarse. "Full quarantine protocols, and someone find out where that cub's parents are before they tear through my station looking for their offspring." "Sir, about that." The security officer's voice was even worse than before. "Sensors are detecting 3 more juvenile Kixin signatures in Bay 19. Zixil's vision tunneled. 3 more? They're all within 5 meters of the human. On screen, Quinn set the first cub down on a supply crate and returned to her armor check. The cub sat there, watching her with what could only be described as adoration. Then 2 more small heads popped out from behind a stack of equipment containers. A 4th squeezed out from under her gear bag. They all padded toward her on oversized paws. None of them attacked. "Launch in 6 minutes, Commander," navigation reminded him, voice cracking. Zixil made a decision that would either save or end his career. Lock down Bay 19, get me a direct comm to the human, and someone find me a kicks-in expert who can explain why our medic is apparently running an unlicensed daycare for the galaxy's deadliest infants. On the monitor, Quinn noticed the additional cubs and sighed. Seriously? Where are you guys even coming from? She didn't sound afraid. She sounded mildly annoyed. A fifth cub chirped from somewhere inside her helmet storage compartment. The comm crackled to life. Quinn, this is Commander Zixil. Do not move. Do not touch the Kixin cubs. A containment team is— Oh, you mean Buttons? Quinn's voice was cheerful, completely at odds with the situation. She picked up the nearest cub, the one that had been in her armor, and held it up to the camera. Yeah, he's been following me around for like 3 days now. Little guy's got attachment issues. Zixil felt his grip on reality loosening. You named it? Well, I couldn't just keep calling him, Hey You, could I? Quinn set Buttons down and started gathering the other cubs, scooping them up like they were harmless pets. Though, honestly, I'm not sure which one is Buttons anymore. They all look pretty similar. Commander, I need to get down there. Glyneth was already moving toward the door. This violates every principle of Kixin behavioral biology, every single one. Take Dr. Nivix from xenobiology, Zixil ordered, and bring sedation equipment, lots of it. Sir, sedatives don't work on Kixin cubs. Their metabolism— Then bring whatever might work. Zixil turned back to the screen. Quinn, listen very carefully. Those are not pets. They are apex predators. One scratch from their claws contains enough neurotoxin to paralyze a Benthari combat drone. Quinn looked down at the cub currently climbing up her leg armor, its tiny claws scrabbling for purchase. Huh, that explains why my left thigh went numb yesterday. I thought I just slept on it wrong. The command deck went silent. Your thigh went numb. Glyneth's voice was faint. Yeah, but it came back after a few hours. No big deal. Quinn successfully dislodged the climbing cub and added it to the growing pile in her arms. She now held 4 of them, stacked like furry, striped cargo. A 5th was attempting to climb onto her head from the equipment rack behind her. She survived a neurotoxin exposure, Dr. Nivix said, appearing next to Glyneth in the doorway. His scales had gone pale gray with shock. A dose that should have required immediate medical intervention. She thought she slept wrong. They sprinted toward Bay 19. When they burst through the door 3 minutes later, the scene had somehow gotten worse. Quinn had set the cubs down and returned to her armor inspection. But now they were everywhere, wrestling with each other near her feet, climbing on her equipment bags, one dangling from her weapon harness by its teeth. Finally, Quinn said, looking up. Can one of you grab Buttons? He keeps trying to eat my medical supplies, and I really need those for the mission. Glyneth and Nivix froze in the doorway. Miss Quinn, Nivix said carefully, his voice the tone one might use with the dangerously insane. We cannot grab a Kixin cub. The last xenobiologist who attempted direct contact lost 3 manipulator appendages. Quinn frowned, walked over to the cub chewing on her supply pack, and simply picked it up. The cub released the pack immediately and began that impossible purring sound again, rubbing its head against her palm. Like this? Quinn demonstrated, her confusion genuine. Nivix made a sound like air escaping from a punctured hull. That's not possible, Glyneth breathed, pulling out a handheld scanner. The readings made her antennae flatten against her skull. The cub's stress hormones are nearly non-existent. Its aggressive pheromone production is suppressed. It's displaying bonding behaviors we've only documented between cubs and their biological mothers. Are you saying— Nivix couldn't finish the sentence. The cubs think she's their mother, or their pack leader, or something that doesn't exist in Kixin biology. Glyneth looked up from her scanner, her voice climbing toward hysteria. They've imprinted on her. Imprinted? Quinn set the cub down and checked her chrono. Look, I don't know what the big deal is here. They're just babies, scared, lonely babies who needed someone to— She stopped, noticing 2 more cubs emerging from inside her helmet. Okay, how many of you are there? Miss Quinn, Nivix said slowly, how long have these cubs been following you? I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 days? They started showing up after I helped in the medical bay. The adult brought in her injured cub, and I guess I just helped? Quinn shrugged. I used to work at a vet clinic back home before I got into combat medicine. Baby animals are baby animals, you know. Baby animals, Glyneth repeated weakly. She thinks kicks and cubs are baby animals. They are baby animals, Quinn said, sounding defensive now. Look at them. They're scared and curious, and they just want someone to pay attention to them. She crouched down, and immediately all 6 visible cubs rushed toward her, climbing over each other to get close. See? They're sweet. One of the sweet cubs opened its mouth in a yawn, displaying rows of crystalline fangs that could shear through bone. Quinn scratched it under the chin. It closed its eyes and purred louder. Commander, Glyneth said into her comm, her voice distant and shocked. We have a situation that requires immediate counsel with kicks in leadership. The human has apparently been running an unauthorized interspecies nursery, and the cubs are... She watched as Quinn stood up, cubs trailing after her like ducklings following their mother. The cubs are treating her like family. Mission launch in 2 minutes, Zixil's response came through. Can we proceed? Glyneth and Nivix looked at each other, then at Quinn, who was now doing a final weapons check while absently reaching down to redirect cubs away from her ammunition pouches. I genuinely have no idea, Glyneth admitted. The roar that shook Bay 19 made every piece of equipment rattle. Glyneth's survival instincts kicked in, sending her diving behind a cargo container. Nivix had already scrambled halfway up a wall support beam. Quinn just looked up from adjusting her boot clasps, mildly annoyed. Could you guys keep it down? I'm trying to concentrate here. Through the bay entrance stalked 2 adult Kuxin, each the size of a small transport vehicle, their fur bristling with aggression. Their eyes, 6 per individual, blazed with protective fury. The lead one, a female, locked onto Quinn and the cubs with laser focus. Oh no, Glyneth whispered from her hiding spot. Those are the parents. We're about to witness a slaughter. The female Kuxin opened her jaws, revealing teeth that could crush Duraplast, and charged. Quinn stood up, placed herself between the charging adult and the cubs, and said firmly, No, sit! The Kuxin skidded to a halt so abruptly she left gouges in the deck plating. Then, inexplicably, she sat. Her haunches hit the ground with a metallic thud. Good girl, Quinn said, reaching out to pat the massive creature's shoulder. The Kuxin, an apex predator that had conquered her homeworld's food chain through pure savagery, leaned into the touch and made a low rumbling sound. Nivix fell off the support beam. What just... Glyneth's translator was struggling to process her shock into coherent language. She gave it a command. It obeyed. Kuxin don't obey commands. They don't have the neural structures for... Hey, bring your friend over here too, Quinn said to the male, who was still standing in the doorway, apparently as confused as everyone else. Come on, don't be shy. Your babies are fine, see? She gestured to the cubs, who were now playing some kind of wrestling game around her feet. They've just been hanging out with me while you were... wherever you were. The male Kuxin approached slowly, cautiously, and then, to the complete destruction of everything Glyneth thought she knew about xenobiology, he also sat when he got close to Quinn. This is wrong, Glyneth said, her voice high and thin. This is all wrong. Everything about this is wrong. Quinn crouched down to the female's level, examining her with a practiced eye. You're stressed. Understandable. Can't find your kids. Probably haven't eaten properly in days. She ran her hands over the Kuxin's flank, feeling for something. And you've got some muscle tension here. When's the last time you actually rested? The massive predator made a sound almost like a whimper. Thought so. Quinn stood and pointed to a clear area of the bay. Go lie down over there. You need to decompress. Your mate will watch the cubs for a bit. Both adult Kuxin looked at each other, seemed to have some kind of silent conversation, and then the female walked to the indicated spot and lay down. The male settled near the cubs, who immediately swarmed over him. "I need to sit down," Nivix said faintly. "My entire career has just become meaningless." "Miss Quinn," Glyneth emerged from her hiding spot on shaking legs. "What did you just do?" Quinn looked genuinely puzzled. Calm down a stressed mother. Honestly, this is basic stuff." She was in full panic mode. You could see it in her posture, her eye dilation, the way her fur was standing up. She needed someone to take charge of the situation so she could stop being in crisis mode. Quinn shrugged. "I just treated them like scared kids who needed boundaries and reassurance." "Scared," Glyneth repeated. "You saw apex predators as scared?" "Well, yeah. The mom couldn't find her babies. Of course she was scared." Quinn walked over to her gear and started packing up her medical supplies while casually stepping over cubs. "Back at the clinic, I dealt with aggressive dogs all the time. Same principle. They're not mean. They're frightened. You just have to show them you're confident and trustworthy." "Dogs?" Nivix's voice cracked. "You're comparing Kixin to Earth canines?" "I mean, kind of." Quinn picked up a cub that was trying to climb into her ammunition case. "Hey, no, not food." The cub chirped and licked her hand. "Good boy. See? Basic training, consistent boundaries, positive reinforcement, calm energy." "Training?" Glyneth whispered. "She's been training them." The medical bay mentioned a behavioral issue last week. Quinn continued, oblivious to the existential crisis she was causing. One of the adult Kixin was having stress-related aggression problems. I showed the staff how to read his body language better, suggested some environmental enrichment, taught them about creating safe spaces. She paused. "Why are you both looking at me like that?" "Because," Nivix said slowly, "that Kixin had been on a suppression medication regimen for 3 years. Nothing worked. You fixed him in 1 session." "It wasn't fixed, it was just understood." Quinn frowned. "He wasn't aggressive. He was overstimulated. Too much noise, too many beings invading his space. I told your staff to give him a quiet corner and respect his boundaries. Basic enrichment." Glyneth pulled up her personal database with trembling appendages. "Kixin behavioral science is a 100-year-old field. We have entire universities dedicated to understanding their psychology. Millions of credits in research. Dozens of experts who've spent their lives studying these creatures." "Okay," Quinn said uncertainly. "And you, a human with experience in Earth veterinary medicine, just invalidated all of it in 6 days." "I didn't invalidate anything," Quinn protested. "I just listened to them, watched what they were telling me with their body language." She gestured to the adult male, who was now grooming one of the cubs with his massive tongue. "Look at him. He's relaxed, comfortable. He trusts me, because I respect his space and his cubs." The female Kixin, still lying down where Quinn had told her to, had closed most of her eyes and was breathing deeply. "She's sleeping," Nivix said in wonder. "A Kixin is sleeping in the presence of an unknown species. That's never been documented outside of their dens." Quinn checked her chrono and sighed. "Look, I really need to finish my pre-deployment check. Mission launches in—" She stopped. "Wait, are we still doing the mission? Because I'm ready if we are." "The mission?" Glyneth said blankly, having completely forgotten about it. "Right, the mission. That thing we planned for 6 months that suddenly seems incredibly unimportant compared to the fact that you've apparently solved the greatest mystery in Kixin behavioral science by accident." "I didn't solve anything," Quinn said, exasperated now. "I just treated them with basic respect and empathy." "Is that really so revolutionary?" From their positions around the bay, 6 Kixin, 2 adults and multiple cubs, all turned to look at her with expressions that, despite being alien, clearly communicated, "Yes, yes it is." The emergency council chamber had never been so crowded. Zixil sat at the head of the table, flanked by 3 Kixin elders who had transported in within the hour. Glyneth and Nivix occupied one side, their data tablets covered in frantically scribbled notes, and Quinn sat at the other end, still in her half-adjusted armor, looking deeply uncomfortable with the attention. 2 Kixin cubs slept in her lap. She was absently petting them. Elder Nixara, her silver-streaked fur marking her as ancient by Kixin standards, leaned forward with all 6 eyes fixed on Quinn. "Explain again, slowly, what you did." Quinn shifted in her seat, trying not to disturb the sleeping cubs. Okay. So when the first cub showed up, Buttons I call him, he was clearly distressed, separated from his mother in an unfamiliar environment, probably hungry. Standard trauma response for a baby animal. Trauma response, Nixara repeated, her translator giving the words an odd inflection. "Yeah, so I did what you'd do with any traumatized juvenile. Made myself non-threatening, spoke in calm tones, let him approach me on his terms, built trust gradually. Once he felt safe, his stress behaviors stopped." Quinn looked around the table. "This is really basic animal psychology. Trauma-informed care. It's not complicated." "Not complicated," Glyneth muttered, making another note. "She thinks interspecies behavioral breakthrough isn't complicated." Nixara's expression, difficult to read on an alien face, but Quinn was getting better at it, showed something like pain. "Human Quinn, I must tell you something about our species, something we do not share with outsiders." She paused, gathering herself. "Our cubs have a mortality rate of 43% before reaching maturity." The room went silent. 43%? Quinn's voice was horrified. That's catastrophic. Why?" "Because we cannot touch them," Nixara said simply. "Our own instincts turn against us. The same aggression that made us apex predators makes us dangerous to our own young. Cubs must be kept isolated, monitored from distance, fed through automated systems. Any physical contact risks triggering attack responses, in the cubs or in us." Quinn looked down at the 2 cubs sleeping peacefully against her. "But they need touch. Social contact. That's fundamental for development in any social species." "We know." Nixara's voice carried centuries of grief. "We have always known. But we cannot change our biology. We are trapped by what we are. Generation after generation, we lose nearly half our children to stress-induced illness, failure to thrive, or accidents caused by their own uncontrolled aggression. Until 6 days ago," another elder added, "when cub mortality in this station sector dropped to 0. Everyone looked at Quinn. "The cubs staying near you," Nixara continued, "should be dead. 3 of them were failing, rejected by our automated care systems as too aggressive. We were preparing to make the compassionate choice." Her claws scraped against the table. "But they found you, and now they thrive." Quinn's arms tightened protectively around the sleeping cubs. "You were going to kill them because they needed touch?" "We did not know that was the problem," Nixara said. "We thought it was genetic weakness, unsuitability for survival. We did not understand that our cubs were dying from loneliness." Nivix pulled up a holographic display showing Quinn's DNA structure next to a Kixin's. Humans possess something we're calling aggressive pack-bonding instincts. You form emotional attachments to other species at a rate we've never documented before. You adopt creatures as companions even when they provide no survival advantage. "We call them pets," Quinn said quietly. "Pets," Nivix repeated. "You've domesticated hundreds of species on your world. You bond with creatures that could kill you. You see danger and think friend." He gestured to the cubs. "This should be impossible, but it's how humans are built. You pack bond with everything. The cubs respond to you," Glyneth added, "because you're genuinely treating them as family, not as threats, not as specimens, not as problems to manage. As children." Quinn looked around the council table, understanding dawning. "So you're saying humans might be able to help raise Kixin cubs, provide the contact and socialization they need without triggering aggression?" "We are saying," Nixara replied, "that you may have accidentally solved our species' greatest tragedy in 6 days, while preparing for a military contract. Which reminds me," Zixil interjected, "we need to discuss the mission." "Can I keep Buttons?" Quinn asked suddenly. The entire council stared at her. I mean, Quinn continued, if we're talking about long-term care solutions and cultural exchange and all that, I've already bonded with him. With all of them, really. And if I'm going to be some kind of consultant or whatever, I should probably have hands-on experience, right? The human, Nixara said slowly, a sound that might have been laughter in her voice, has just revolutionized our understanding of child rearing, solved a crisis that has plagued us for millennia, and her primary concern is pet custody. He's not a pet, Quinn protested. Okay, he's kind of a pet, but also family? Is that weird? It is the most human thing I have ever heard, Glyneth said, and despite everything, she was smiling. Nixara stood, her massive form towering over the table. Human Quinn, on behalf of the Kixin species, I formally request that you accept a position as Cultural Integration Specialist with full authority to develop and implement new cub rearing protocols. You will be compensated appropriately. You may keep Buttons and any other cubs who have bonded to you. What about the mission? Zixil asked weakly. The mission, Nixara said, can wait. This is more important than any military contract. Quinn looked down at the sleeping cubs in her lap, then back at the assembled leaders of multiple species, all waiting for her answer to reshape their entire civilization. Do I still get to do combat medicine? She asked. Because I actually like that job. You can do whatever you want, Zixil said, rubbing his temples with all 4 manipulator appendages. At this point, I'm convinced humans can do anything they set their minds to. Logic be damned. Cool, Quinn said, grinning. Then yes, I accept. When do I start? You started 6 days ago, Glyneth pointed out. We're just now catching up. Quinn left the council chamber 3 hours later, her armor still half adjusted. 6 Kixin cubs trailing behind her in a somewhat chaotic line. Buttons, she'd finally figured out which one he was, rode on her shoulders, his tail wrapped loosely around her neck for balance. I still don't understand what the big deal is, she said to Glyneth, who was walking beside her with a datapad full of new protocols. I just treated them like animals instead of monsters. That sentence, Glyneth replied, is going to be quoted in xenobiology textbooks for the next century. Behind them, Nixara was already on comms with the Kixin homeworld. Quinn caught fragments of the conversation. Human pack bonding instincts, mortality rate improvement, request additional human consultation. Wait, Quinn stopped walking, causing a minor pileup of cubs. Are you saying other Kixin want humans to help raise their cubs? By morning, every Kixin colony world will be requesting human advisors, Nixara said, ending her call. You have given us hope for the first time in our recorded history. And it's not just Kixin, Zixil added, appearing from a side corridor with his own datapad. 3 other species classified as high aggression have already submitted consultation requests. Apparently, word travels fast. Quinn blinked. 3 other species? I haven't even finished my armor check. Speaking of which, Zixil continued, his voice tired but amused. The mission has been rescheduled. Your new assignment takes priority. Congratulations, Cultural Integration Specialist Quinn. You're now one of the highest-ranking humans in this sector. If I'd known playing with puppies was this impressive, Quinn muttered, I'd have skipped the mercenary training and just opened a daycare. Buttons chirped and batted at her ear playfully. Station protocols were already being rewritten. New sections appeared in the safety manual. Human pack bonding phenomenon. Interaction guidelines. Personnel were being briefed on human emotional attachment ranges and interspecies adoption behaviors. The medical bay was frantically reorganizing to accommodate what they were calling human-assisted behavioral therapy. Quinn just wanted to finish her equipment check and maybe grab some food. Does the cafeteria allow cubs? She asked, heading in that direction. It does now, Glyneth said, making another note on her datapad. They passed a viewport showing the vast expanse of space beyond the station. Somewhere out there, entire species were reconsidering their understanding of aggression, child rearing, and the possibility of change. Governments were drafting new policies. Scientists were rewriting theories. And at the center of it all was one human who had simply treated frightened children with kindness. Quinn paused at the viewport, cubs gathering around her feet. One climbed up her leg. Another started gnawing on her boot. Buttons kneaded her shoulder with his paws, purring that impossible purr. "You know what's funny?" she said to no one in particular. "Back home, I was never that great at my job. Got squeamish around blood sometimes. Couldn't handle the really tough cases." She scratched Buttons under his chin. "Turns out I was just working with the wrong species. Or," Glyneth suggested gently, "you were always this good, and Earth simply didn't know what they had." Quinn laughed, the sound echoing down the corridor as she continued toward the cafeteria, a parade of deadly apex predators following her like ducklings following their mother. Her armor still needed adjustment. Her weapons still needed calibration. Her entire life had just been rerouted into galactic significance. But first, she needed to feed Buttons. He was getting cranky. Behind her, Zixil watched the procession and activated his personal log. Commander's log, supplemental. The human has successfully integrated 6 juvenile Kixin into station life. Multiple species are requesting her expertise. She remains concerned primarily with feeding schedules and equipment maintenance. He paused, watching Quinn disappear around a corner, cubs tumbling after her. Humans continue to make everything complicated by being impossibly simple. I suspect this is just the beginning. Somewhere in the cafeteria, Quinn was explaining to a bewildered cook why yes, the cubs could absolutely have some of that meat, and no, they wouldn't bite anyone as long as you asked nicely first. The galaxy would never be quite the same.